and safe. And everybody's at least have one or two good functioning colonies. There has been a lot of losses this year for people all over Rocky Mountain beekeepers and Colorado backyard beekeepers. I see and hear people losing colonies. If you've had that happen, don't stress that you are the only one in town that happening to, because it's happening to everybody. I just killed a queen and combined a colony today because I had one that wasn't even a mix, and I had to put it in with another one. So I'm going to start feeding big time, and I mixed up a big batch of pollen sub, and I'm going to put pollen on them. I'm going to give them everything they can use themselves. If they ignore it, fine. I figure there's so much rabbit brush. They have been bringing in a lot of yellow pollen, a little bit of white. Don't know what it is, but I'm glad to see it. So they're bringing in pollen. They're bringing in nectar. They're going to be raising babies. We may be 1 or 2 generations away from the fat winter babies that we're going to really want to help through winter. So making sure they have water and food is going to help that happen, and treating for mites. If you haven't tested and treated, if you've tested and had mites and not treated, we need to treat. So that gets you started for the winter. We were going to talk about things like quilt boards and candy boards. First, does anybody have any questions about what's going on with their hives?
What kills the queens?
Why did I kill the queen?
You or how
I did. I took a pair of scissors and cut her head off.
Oh.
And that is unfortunately the downside of beekeeping.
There
There was no way that colony was going to make it through winter. There was maybe 1,000 bees. She came from a split. She came for a split. I'm not positive if she was the old queen or the new queen. If she was an old queen, she was an old queen, and she wasn't laying. If she was a new queen, she didn't get well mated, and that happens, especially when you're raising your own and doing your own splits. Not every queen's going to come back as a blue ribbon thoroughbred. You know, some don't do well in mating. Some don't come back at all. So, I'm sorry.
Just telling her she wants to chase.
So since I had a very weak colony that I knew was going to die, had some brood in there and still had foragers, still had been collecting pollen and nectar, I put that in with another hive. Because it was a stronger hive, she was laying better. She didn't have as many resources because she was laying better. You know, she was eating up everything in the attic. All the kitchen was empty. So I gave her everything from the previous colony and put them together. In a couple of days I'll go out and I'll move them from the horse property they were on out back to my house, and I'll just start smothering them with love and sugar water and pollen soap. And if
what
they're
concentration of sugar water you
know, until it gets really cold, I'm okay with 1 to 1. Sometimes I'll mix a heavy batch. I'll put it in there anyway. I won't take time to dilute it. Either way, they're going to take it in. They're probably not going to be making a lot of wax this time of year. They're probably going to be more concerned with feeding themselves, feeding their children, and just storing for the winter. So if I give them 1 to 1, I figure they're going to use it themselves. If I give them 2 to 1, they're definitely going to use it themselves. And if it's not freezing at night, I'll still top feed in a box. So if they get if there's some humidity in there from it, they're not going to get too cold. It won't kill them. If it drops down to freezing at night, I may reconsider that. I may give them feeders that won't. Those jars will pump through different changes in temperature. So when that fluid expands and contracts, if it gets down in there on the bees when it's 32 degrees, you know, it could hurt them. So I keep track of the weather. If I have to entrance feed, I'll do it. If I entrance feed, I'll give them like an inch to go in and out. I'll block the rest of the entrance and shove that Boardman feeder up tight, because I'm already having visitors from my neighbor's hives coming over and checking all the cracks around the back of your hives. Your own bees won't go to the back of your hives for too many reasons. They know where the front door is. So if you have a bunch of bees bouncing off the back of your hives, running up food, looking for cracks to get in, it's probably not your bees. Or they're the other colony you have in your yard trying to go to that colony to steal that food. So it's robbing season. And, you know, we didn't lose nearly the plants I thought we were going to lose in that freeze.
Right.
And this rabbit brush, it's glorious stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that they're able to bring in this late in the fall. It's looking pretty good. And evidently, this rabbit brush is the godson for colonies, or the godsend for colonies in the fall. They really come back from a hard summer with this stuff. So, you know, fortunately, they're bringing all that in. So they may or may not take whatever you give them. If they're getting it outside, let them get it from outside. 2-to-1 sugar syrup won't freeze. 1-to-1 will. You can store 2-to-1 in the fridge, no problem. A little bit of vinegar in it, a little bit of, teaspoon, or quarter teaspoon of, tablespoon, I'm sorry, of white vinegar in that will keep it from bacteria from forming in it at all. And the bees don't care, they don't mind that. Pollen cell will freeze, pollen cell will keep in the fridge. You can keep that stuff all winter. So, and give it to them on a nice day, you know, when they can take it in and use it. And that I've done
So
out in the winter.
you just add the vinegar without checking pH?
You know, I've taken a quart and just dropped a couple drops of vinegar in there. If it's too strong a smell, maybe I'll dilute it, but usually it's not even enough for me to notice it. Bees will notice
So
it.
recommended is 4.7, yes?
Okay. Yeah, I haven't looked at those numbers, so.
Yeah, so if you make it and you have
It'll keep the
pH,
bacteria down in the sugar.
I use Honeybee Healthy. I just put a splash of Honeybee Healthy.
And that works well too.
Yeah.
Honeybee Healthy works
4.7
fine.
and it won't create mold in bacteria growth. That's very good. Yeah.
But if you're feeding bees inside the box and there's a feeder inside, you'll have a lot less robbing issues. The Boardman feeder I bring up that's in the entrance, I make sure things are pretty tight up front because they will attract wasps, yellow jackets, and other bees because they'll smell it. They can smell sugar. So, you know, if it's dripping out and stuff, you know, you'll see some more activity, but, you know, your bees will get to it first and they can protect a colony. A strong colony will protect itself. A weak colony, you'll have to watch it a little closer. So, other than that, nights, feeding, watching the weather, that's kind of the fall checklist. Making sure your bees are healthy now so that winter bees are going to be okay too. We have brought some of this equipment for you to pass around. This is yours, April?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
So
this I'm assuming
I had
you
all
set.
those shims already, so I just used those.
Okay, so I'm assuming you set fondant on this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. April likes to make fondant. Pass that around. She likes to make fondant, set it on paper plates, and turn it on upside down on these.
Yeah.
This is 1/4 inch cloth. This is 1/2 inch hardware cloth. Bees can get through both of them. I made this with 1/2 inch because when I do my sugar, if I don't make fondant, I'll get sugar just slightly moist, and I'll pack it in here on top of a table, on top of some wax paper, and I'll start pressing it down, and I'll get about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches of sugar packed on there tight, and in a day or so it'll dry out and it'll get nice and firm, so I can pick this up and it's not going to break apart. If it breaks apart, it's because you didn't get it wet enough. I can set this on top of a hive. I'll usually take a mason jar or something and put it in the middle and pack it around it so there's a big hole in the center, and then ventilation can get up through out of the hive. They can expel the humidity out of the hive, and they can crawl up underneath this, and they can go all through it and eat that apart.
So you
And
need this for winter, or?
I do this for winter. That's like one of my winter pieces of equipment I put on. I consider it cheap insurance.
Is that what you call the candy board?
Yeah, it's a candy board. So this is what we call. And basically, it's just hard to
recommended
sugar.
thickness, or
I'm sorry?
what's the thickness recommendation? Any, or?
1.5, 2 inches. That's about it.
You know what I mean?
You pick some nice
That particular
The art of dinner.
that particular one has 1.5 inches, a small hole in it. You don't have to do that. In fact, if I wouldn't have put a hole in it because I don't need other bugs coming in at that sugar. They'll come in from underneath after it, so I don't really need to provide an extra entrance. what I put on top of that, and once again, you don't have to do this. I just consider it cheap insurance. I've got the wood around. I need something to do. I build boxes. I build junk for bees. So this, I used an old Queen excluder because that's what I had around, and it had some holes in it anyway. So I just nailed it to the underside of this 2-inch frame. And I have taken old useless bee boxes I didn't want to use anymore, and I cut them in half or into three sections, and use them for these boxes as well because they're already locked together, already joined. So I put, usually on these, I'll use a smaller hole of hardware cloth. You can go down to all the way to the window screen. As long as there's humidity can get through it and keep it dry, that's fine. I put a piece of burlap on top of that. Feel free to play with that, hand it out, hold it around.
So that goes on top of the candy.
Yeah, because that candy board, it, you know, who knows what happens in a beehive for sure, unless you break it open and look all the time. And in the winter, you stop going into your beehives. Because cracking those things apart and poking holes in their house, they have to fix them, and it's just more energy for them. It's not worthwhile. So I'll put that candy board on, full of candy with a hole in the middle. I'll set that on top. I'll fill it with that bedding. It's like hamster bedding. You get it at PetSmart, get it whatever. You can use cedar chips or wood shavings, whatever, right? And I can buy a big block of it at any pet store or whatever for a couple bucks. I can get enough for the next 10 years. Oh yeah, and they'll give you more than you'll ever use. And it's good. It works great for smokers. That shavings works. Yeah, it smolders like crazy. It's really good for smokers. So I lay the burlap on there. You can get burlap bags at a lot of places. Murdoch's, to be or not to be, I think. Perhaps if Dakota Bee starts up again, I have news about that later.
Coffee roast.
Do they charge for the burlap bags?
Sometimes.
No, do they charge you for the burlap bags?
And Murdoch, they do.
Yes, they do.
What do they charge for it?
I haven't bought it. The last time I bought was like a couple years ago.
Don't they sell
And they were pretty cheap, like 5 for 5 or something.
Okay. Coffee shops.
Basically, the burlap is just so if I used 1/2-inch cloth
Yeah.
and I didn't lay burlap on there, when I put those shavings in there, I might as well be sifting it out onto the bees. So that cloth is just to keep all that dust and stuff from going through the hive. You know, it's just hygienic to me. So I drilled holes on it in it so that air can come out. Ventilation is important in the wintertime. It's better to have cooler, dry air than warmer, wet air. Because bees will get cold when they get wet.
So when you talk about ventilation, I was reading that you can tilt the hive if you can so that moisture can roll out, or is that not necessary?
You can tilt the whole hive, or you can tilt just the lid and put weight on it. And that way, when snow sets on your hive, if you're not able to get out there and brush it off all the time, it can drain and roll off the hive when it gets warmer.
But you don't need to tilt the back of the hive forward so that moisture rolls out the front, at the bottom.
You can.
I was reading that you
You
could
can
do that.
certainly do that if you want.
Okay, but it's not
You don't have to.
I've never had to.
We don't. Yeah,
One thing that I was seeing on YouTube is you can tilt the whole hive so that moisture in the bottom rolls
And
out.
some
You know, commonly,
I can't imagine tilting my hive the way it's set up.
I've only known one person to have.
Thank
I've only known one person in Colorado to have absolute condensation, and that's because we live in a
comes out
desert.
through your entrance instead of
That doesn't mean it can't happen, depending on where your hive is. Maybe your hive is in a little microclimate in your yard or something where it's always humid, or you know, there's environmental factors at play. I've never had condensation in my hives. I've got early morning sunshine on my hives in the morning and almost all day. Even on the shortest day of the year, they get sun. They're going to get a little warmth in that, of course not at night. But I put these quilt boards on so I know that the holes around the outside of this board are going to evacuate air accordingly, and that the wood chips in there are going to suck up moisture. that's my whole point. If I didn't think that'd work, I would've bought it. I've never checked the humidity values of my wood chips to see if it's doing that. It's just that if I've treated for mites and I've made sure they had enough food and I've made sure they can get out when they need to void in the wintertime, even when it's warm enough for them to fly, and you'll see them out flying on warm days in Colorado. They can get out, get some water, poop, pee, get back into the hive. They're usually okay. I had 7 out of 7 come through last year. That may have been an aberration. I always had 40-50% losses for the first 3 years. But after I treated, made sure they were treated, taken care of, had water and food all winter long, that's how it turned out for me. Now, whether this is the absolute reason for that, I can't tell you yes. This, like I said, it's cheap insurance for me. I do know that sometime during the winter and definitely during the spring, they went up into those sugar boards and just started eating like crazy. Because that's all they had. They were warm enough to eat, they needed to eat, and they were tearing that sugar up. They were even tearing the brick hard fondant that I tried to make that turned out to be just ridiculous. I could pound a nail with that stuff, and they were chewing at that too. I mean, so in the any of that sugar board that's left in the spring, once something blooms, once the dandelions come out, maple start to pop. I pull those I'll pull those candy boards out usually like April or so, February, March, usually March. I'll pull those candy boards out, drop them in water, and then feed the sugar water back to the bees. It doesn't go away. I can reuse it. It's a renewable resource.
So, what's the secret to make not hard, like brick fondant?
I don't know.
April's
Okay,
story.
so I made a whole bunch of fondant a couple weeks ago, and I used my standing mixer to whip it up. The first batch I made was brick hard. I mean, so brick hard I couldn't even mash it into a plate. The second batch I made, it's right behind Judy. I made it the same way. I measured everything the same, and it's so gooey. I just don't know if that's going to work.
Did you make them on the same day?
Yes. And then I bought some on Amazon, and that's also back there. I bought 10 pounds. That's only 5 pounds right there.
This right here?
And I'm going to use that first. That looks so much better.
That's the
I
hard
have
brick.
a question for
That's
you.
the hard brick. April.
I'm sorry, what?
I have a question. So you use powder sugar or crystal sugar?
Regular
For
cane
fondant.
sugar.
Powdered
Oh,
sugar,
not
like
powdered
confectionery
sugar,
sugar, has cornstarch additive.
That's what I want to say.
Not a
That's-
good idea.
That's very bad.
Beet
for
sugar,
me.
corn sugar, raw sugar, turbinado, sometimes it's referred to. They all have either additives or minerals in it that the bees can't handle. Plants take all those minerals and process them and do that for the bee, and then they do the rest with the nectar. Granulated refined sugar is the closest you're going to get to a clean food source that isn't absolute nectar. We don't want our bees to live just on that for sure, but if it's going to keep your bees alive, sometimes you have to resort to it. Go ahead.
Cake makers, do they use the same font?
Depends on what they put in it for their
That
if they use all
fondant
confectionery.
that I bought on Amazon. I have the receipt. I can show you if you're interested. Said it's not for human consumption, so it's a little different than what.
Doesn't matter whether
It's
brown
not
or
for
white.
human.
Wait a minute.
Well,
Brown is not
Live
good.
critter and you can't
Brown
eat it?
sugar
That's
still
dangerous.
has certain minerals in it.
Because-
Because I'm thinking Cisco, maybe we could
Refined
order
clean out.
Yeah.
So they take the
100
stuff
pounds
that
and split it if that's good
they
stuff.
haven't
I
put
don't know.
anything
Yeah.
in that helps the bee considerably.
That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah, so I don't know. I was going to ask somebody if that's from the soft company that bought it.
Even I've talked to APRs who even want to use honey
I think that they may have to process it under their FDA reasoning.
I try to leave them.
It's like dog food.
Yeah. And this is just like
Yeah.
It's slabbed already.
Yeah.
That's 5 pounds, but it's a 10-pound box.
How much is it?
And it already came
It's like,
slabbed.
I think with shipping and everything, it was like under $40.
I have a recipe that I haven't had any problem with, and it's real nice.
Feel free to share.
Yeah,
Here, I brought it.
All right.
And then I have another one, like, sort of like this, but more for the late winter, because it has some pollen in it too. But
Okay.
it does that where you let it set to get hardened.
Yeah.
And I like it too.
Put it
It's,
on
it's
I mean, there's probably a couple recipes that you can find on Beekeeper websites that are just fine. You know, they don't do any sugar because they don't hurt them. So you can kind of pick and choose. Look at it for you.
sugar, water, sugar, lemon, and then essential oil if you want fat in it.
Yeah, it didn't set up, and I whipped it like crazy for a very long time.
Like I use olive oil in mine. The only thing I don't put in it is corn.
And I know it says to do that.
Yeah,
Use the paddle and all that, and I don't do that. I just stir it.
I mix it with a paint stirrer. I put a paint stirrer in the power drill. Or I mixed it in a bucket. And it just worked fine.
You've been doing that?
I haven't. Have you?
I just been doing pond things.
Yeah, me too. Interesting.
You can spread it on top bars, or you can put it in between a couple pieces of wax paper and cut your own pollen patty shaped rectangles, and just lay it on top of the brood chamber frames. I've even got it on top of the honey super frames, and they'll go up there and get it, come back and bring it back down and eat it. They may or may, like I say, they may or may not take anything you give them, but at least if they have it, they have it. If you, one other point, if you guys have taken all their honey away from them because you like honey, well, you better feed them, because this nectar flow that we've got going now from this rabbit brush, if it's rich and plentiful and lasts forever, don't bet on it. So, you know, we're all probably going to end up feeding sometime. I have been told by a lady from Mile Hive, that's a president, that was the former president of that. She's got a master's in entomology. She said that they'll suck a medium super dry in a week and a half when there's no nectar. They will empty that thing. They'll empty it, take it down. You'll go out in a week and a half, pick up the back of that thing, and it'll feel like it just dropped 50 pounds, because they will pull it all out. And they'll go through it real fast. If you've got 30,000 bees, nothing to eat, where are they going to go besides outside? They'll take all that sugar out of the super, or they'll take all that out of the super. So if you haven't left them any honey to eat for the winter to store, then you're definitely going to want to feed these bees. Okay. If you've left them some, it's good insurance for them for the winter. It may be the last thing they go after, which is okay, because come December 31st, they're not going to go anywhere but upstairs into your supers, eat up there.
Can we post that good recipe on the website or something?
What's that?
This recipe.
April will take a picture of it, put it on the website.
No, you can have the.
So in our hive,
Oh, yeah.
almost exclusively
Can I have that?
Yeah. I made a copy.
Oh, good, thank you.
Okay.
Could you post it on some place?
Posted on
You know, if it was earlier in the year, I'd say it was out of proportion. But this time of year, if you've got it so packed with honey that they can't move, let them eat it, and they'll make their own room. And if you've got a lot of bees in there, let them eat it.
Because we had a show already one day, but they didn't touch the thing and didn't do anything.
Okay. So have you taken any honeycomb? You know, take yourself, if you've got a bit full, you can take yourself a couple frames and live
The more
alone.
money I throw at those bees,
But leave them at least
better they're gonna be for me, right?
medium. If you can leave them
I would
medium,
write
leave
them
them
a
medium.
check if I thought
We know
that
it
would
didn't
work.
The medium is a shorter box, 6 1/2. Not a deep, not a deep. check?
Pretty much.
See, that blue box right there on top of the dark blue box, the light blue box, that's a zero. So the shorter one.
The only we have those on because there's jars in there. And sometimes we have birds in them.
Yeah, have they got it brood? Have you checked the brood?
We're feeding all of them.
I can always hold
Have you checked for your thing?
if you close in the bottom,
You're not seeing any eggs, or maybe 3 or 4-year-old, 3 or 4-day-old larvae curled up in the bottom of the cell. You have seen
Is that Polish?
Put them in some see if they start building that out. They may need to make some more especially in the food chain. You can still give them a little more. And you know what the other thing.
You put the little wings to the winter coat when you're putting those on. Man, that stuff is
Okay. We took off.
Which is interesting, if you've got a colony of 30,000 bees in 2 weeks, and they seem to be covering everything, but they let the frame out on the end before they up and up the station. It doesn't make any sense. I see it all the time. You guys have got 8 frame boxes or 7 frame boxes because they never build out 10 frames. They get to number 8.
That's all the higher they can count.
No, they say we
okay, we're done.
Frame boxes. We don't do that.
There's logic to their thinking. You got to understand how women think.
Well, I'm first in that one.
They always leave one behind. It's weird.
Voluntold.
I'll take an older frame with Kohana, and I'll replace that frame and see if they work on it, if they use it. But or that's when people checkerboard times. They'll take those empty frames, move them into the middle, not necessarily dividing the brood chamber, but they'll move it closer in and see if they'll work that together. But still, they may just make fatter comb on each side, fill that space. I've seen them do that too. They just do screwy stuff for whatever reason they decide.
Going sideways.
If you give them space and put plants in it for no reason.
And then
I always take it out. Break it.
Yeah.
Try again.
Try
again.
Making a redo.
Oh yeah. I take it out.
See what happens.
Building wrong.
They quite often like to go up and down, up and down, up and down. The only time I've ever seen a
Build it right way.
I won't say it this way, but one way to guarantee 10 frames of brood is to only have a 10 frame box with nothing else. But by the time they get there, they've usually swarmed because they run out of room. And they can see it coming, and they've made that decision. And so forcing a queen and a colony to lay in those outside frames, boy, it's such a balancing act. By the time you push them that far out, they may have decided we need a big tree, let's go, and they leave. You know, just, I mean, trying to control their behaviors, we're like so far with it, and then they do what the heck they want to do.
Hey Doug, I think we ought to go around and ask for questions, comments.
Forget that, stack those, and then put the cover on.
I've put the inner cover on and the top cover.
I was going to ask
Because see, by the time they've gone to the sugar, and I'll see them cluster tight in that hole around the sugar, and that that sugar will start getting chewed into the edges and stuff, and they'll start making more room. But they'll just cluster right up tight against the underside of that.
Have you put the inner board on top of that one?
They'll be just like all over here in a big ball, and there'll be sugar all around here, and they may come up and crawl around on top of that, and then go right back down in when it gets cold.
So do you put the inner board on top or on the bottom of that?
I'll put the inner board on top of the quilt board if I've got the quilt board
Okay.
on. That way everything is stacked. We've got all our bee living space down below. Then the food at the very top where they're going to end up anyway in the wintertime, up at the top of the hive on a cold night.
Eventually.
And then this is on top of the sugar, so if there's any extra humidity or any extra air that needs to run up through there, which they'll manage, I'll have the inner cover and the outer cover on this, and it'll all vent out these holes that I've screened so that other bugs don't get in there, mice don't get in there and make a nest, stuff like that. The screen is a big deal because the mice will love to crawl up on top of that and nest in this. I mean, it's growing bed. So anywhere a mouse can get in. Another thing, mouse guards, not a bad idea. Entrance reducers, definitely a good idea.
When do you install those?
I put the mouse guards in when it starts cooling down and the mice want to come inside and get warm.
No, in the next couple of weeks or so.
You know, if it snows and at the end of September, have your mouse guards.
Reducing
Definitely reduce the entrance now.
Definitely
It's robbing season.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Could you go
If-
down to 1 inch?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I do.
My bees are, every time I push that entrance reducer up against them and give them the smallest hole, they push it back out.
Yeah.
They crack it.
I take mine down.
At the hive body, they push it out enough so that bees can crawl down in behind it. And I just, as long as you guys if you're going to act like ants and push these things around and carry them,
You think you can
just
defend yourself?
thing. I figure the hive's strong enough to defend itself. And
Yeah.
I've plugged top entrances because I've had trespassers come over pinging those top entrances, checking them out and getting forced away. And I don't want to encourage them to go back and tell the rest of the colony, oh, we found a weak hive with a top entrance. I know that. Let's go check it out. And I've had, like just 2 days ago, I put a top feeder on with the feeder in the little plastic entrance thing, right? So if it drips at all, it's just going onto the entrance, not down in through the top cover, right? So I put the entrance cover on. It's one of those with the notches on each end, and I got the notch turned down, and the bees can get in and out of the notch. Well, guess where they were hitting that hive? They weren't even going near the front entrance. They were hitting both sides, front and back, crowding on that notch, both those notches, trying to get in. And my bees were beating them off, but I smoked for 20 minutes on those to try and discourage them, so I could put duct tape over those things. And I used up a whole smoker just trying to get them to keep away from it. They'd come back, I'd smoke them off, come back. We played that game for 20 minutes until I got the duct tape on, and then they still came around and kind of pinged off it, but they finally realized there was no way in, and they couldn't smell in there anymore. They can smell this if there's a crack. They can smell if there's a hole. So that's where they're going to go. So that's the issue I have. And it seems to be like one hive at a time. Like I'll have a hive that's real strong over here, and they'll try that one a little, get discouraged, and then maybe a couple days later, I'll see them bouncing off this hive here. Go to this one. Maybe it's weak enough. They'll bounce off of that one. Fortunately, I plugged all the holes and put the reducers on, and they can.
So, could this be some robbing going on in this hive? You can see the bees under the top lid there.
When I see them going after a top lid like
they're
that,
looking for a hole to rob
I think they're
in?
looking for egress.
Okay.
I think it should be the hive next door, or the hive down, or the hive over in that field.
Yeah.
And they're like, we smell a hive
There's
here.
no family ties here.
We know there's food in there. It's just a matter if we can get in there and get it.
There's frame feeders in the first one and the last one, so there's food in there.
So they can definitely smell sugar.
And
They can
it's right
smell,
on the-
and they can smell a super.
Yeah.
I can walk by my hives and smell that nice, healthy, pungent, sweet hive smell that's waxed and propolis, and it's warm, and I can smell that coming off the hive, and I know it's a healthy hive. I can tell the difference between a hive I've fed sugar for 2 months and a hive that has warm honey in it. Because the sugar, sometimes it'll smell a little rancid or something, just a little off. It's not deadly, But I can smell a difference. I can smell a good hive and a bad one.
I can smell.
Yeah.
Unless I step in it.
You can definitely smell foul brood. Any of the foul broods, they're called foul broods because they're foul. You can smell that. If your hive smells rotten, there might be something going on over there.
Or your inner
I
cotton.
have, rabbit screen,
Is that smelling? Not yours.
you know, a little thing that you flip, open, and then a little screen down here that'll move up and down. You can have it either with little openings, or you can close it off. You know what I mean?
So he's working in the
guys-
underwood
I'd
department.
use your smallest entrance ring.
How do they get the dead bees out if it's
Oh, they'll
only
get 'em
that
out.
top thing that's open?
They'll push their ways through. I've seen them push dead bees out the top,
Oh yeah.
drag them out the top, and I've seen them dragging them around inside, looking for a way out.
Wow.
They're pretty determined. Those morgue attendants, if they want a body out of there, they'll try their best to get it out because they know that's the way they're programmed. That way. It's a biological imperative. That's why if you got a lot of dead bees in the hive, there's something going on in there too. If they're not cleaning house, you know, they're overwhelmed and they need something going. They need some bodies.
Yeah.
So when
I've pulled boxes up and had bottom screens that were covered with dead bees, and it's a sick hive. I know something's up. And then I pulled bees and had nothing on the screens, and I'm like, well, you guys are cleaning house, so I just need to do something to help them. They take care of their own home.
I've heard people say both ways as far as bottom board going there.
I've had screen, I've had solid. You know, I've talked to people that have commercial apiaries with mile hive and stuff like that, and they don't use screen bottom boards. They're just fine with solid boards.
Yeah.
And then I've had screen bottom boards for the last 3 years, and I've left them probably more room than they need, but they've still wintered. I think bees they control their own thermodynamics very well. If they don't get knocked too much out of their norm, they do their own controls. They do their own work.
You can just leave them open all winter. Leave the screen open. You don't put a.
I don't put a bottom in. I just leave it. I leave them enough to get up high and stay warm, rather than try to limit any airflow through the hive. If, for instance, if you got a solid bottom board and it gets to that time of year when you don't have to worry about robbing or mice, if you've got it closed down enough so that air can get in, you're probably okay. You probably don't have to worry about venting because it'll all come in through the front door. You know, all that air will go up and through the hive and through the front door, and any humidity will go out. I leave the screen on and put entrance reducers on, so I know the screen's got that air that can go through, and that the entrance reducers will keep anything I don't want out of the hive. If I go out, if my hive stands are set up to where there's snow piled up around the bottoms of them and stuff, I clear my entrances and I make sure that the bottoms of the hives are clear to where if they need air coming in from underneath, they can get it. And I'll try to keep that real clear. So I tilt. Sometimes I'll tilt my top covers up on an angle so that I don't have. Since I get morning sun that warms up on the back hillside pretty good, that snow never lasts for long, and it'll drip off those top covers. I don't want it dripping on the front door. And I'll have ice built up behind the hives on the ground because it's shady behind the hives. But I won't have it. The front of the hives will be dry. So you know, that's the way I try to keep it for myself. I put them in a place where they'll get sun as soon as they can, as long as they can. You know, that's where I like to have it. If you've got deciduous trees over your hives, and if the leaves fall off, they're going to get sun. When it gets cool, the sun will hit them. You know, stuff like that. I mean, it depends on. Like, you know, so many things depend on the bees and the weather at the time. You know, sometimes you get a cold snap that kills your bees, and sometimes you get a cold snap and all the bees are just fine. And you may end up with something that big in February, but I've had that happen and they've still built up. I've given them pollen sub and sugar, and she started laying when the days got longer, but when the dandelions come up, they're going. They're doing all right. So.
What about the outside, wrapping the hives and stuff?
That's fine if you want to do that. Cozies are, April uses cozies every year. It's successful.
I've had good luck with this. You just buy it by the roll at Home Depot.
Yeah.
And it's just bubble wrap, but it's
You
shiny on
staple it
both
on?
sides and reflects the heat in.
How did you staple it on?
No, I run a rope around it and just tie it on.
Okay.
So seems to work.
I've roped off and blanketed and done so many things to try and think I'm helping them. So maybe it's working well. So, and then there's somebody out there in Adams County who has 50 hives sitting in a field and he doesn't see them again till March.
Yeah.
And they live. It's just God. You don't know.
I've done both. Well, just left them and didn't wrap them, and they survived. But I think the wrapping is more for me. It's like my peace of mind, I feel, especially when it's 10 below, and I think, oh, good, my bees are wrapped up nice and cozy. I don't know.
I do try and give them a windbreak
Yeah.
on the northeast or northwest side. So I'll stake out and put some plywood, or if I had like a dozen hay bales.
I mean, European hives, they have much higher, all we have is 3/4 inch wood, and they have actually installations a much higher R factor, so there's nothing wrong with wrapping or wind, especially. I heard just the dry paper, the first layer of your roof, the tar paper,
felt
wrapping
paper, they'll do that.
that warms up on a hot day,
Yeah.
especially in Colorado. That gives them a little bit relief. On the,
Yeah,
on the warm
that
day.
black paper will it'll hold a lot of heat.
I did that the first year I did it, I had it go up above and then overlap on the top.
Not a good idea.
No, I got moisture.
Well, that's and there again,
So
you
now I just
want to make sure that hive can vent
wrap around. Well, I had
anything moist.
I had the hole through that, but it was too much.
It's gotta be below the roof and don't cover your entrance as well.
Yeah.
There's a tipping point like where you can help them too much.
Yeah.
I really do. Because they do
Put a
their thermodynamics. They
above the
take care of
live
And
at
the
the
top,
top, so
so
for
yeah.
them, that
They
was
use the
Yeah.
top.
necessary for down here.
Yeah, if you're at
Then that
7,000-8,000
won't go
feet,
down and over.
there's a
Right.
different ball
Yeah,
game.
no, I actually
No.
I'd like to
And I put
see
them in the
all this hay, within 6 inches or
Yeah.
a foot of all these hives here.
Winter
Come Halloween, I want to see a windbreak behind these. Hillside, this big flat hillside, it's going to get nothing but wind all winter
When it
long.
warms up, so you keep a constant temperature.
Some of those are Kathy Gills, and I think she knows a few people.
Freezing and thawing.
I don't know if I just didn't know about
They may be neighbors as well. I'm hoping some of our neighbors see this going
If you're
on.
telling them, man, what
Wanna
kind
be
of a hive you
beekeeper
got,
too. This is a pretty decent area. There's a
it just
pond.
slides down and over.
50, 200 yards that way.
Really?
and all this natural stuff.
Yeah.
But I
I mean,
Oh,
yeah,
I'm talking about
and
solar. You put a solar panel on
if we
top
can
of
get
it.
more plants going in that center area over there, like some big pollinator stuff going on, that'll help.
We don't have
But see, in the spring out here,
that's a
all
bummer.
a lot of these trees around here are flowering trees. It's just this year, that spring, no pears, no peaches, no apples. I mean, there's reasons they didn't get any. It just froze out. All my trees had to start over again. I thought they were going to die.
It's peace of mind. I don't know.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's more for us.
Well, when it's down below and cool, it's thinking, okay, they're warm. I like that one.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Whatever.
Okay, guys. Start with the wrong form. Make your bottom form right.
Oh, that's probably built up on top. See this even still, and then if it takes on like a peanut shape, like if it curls or just leave it extends here, get some more pictures. There's only two kinds of extended cell. One's a drone and it's got a dome on top of it, and they stick up about that high.
I think so. Yeah. What about you?
No, not so much.
Yeah.
Kind of heard it before.
Yeah. I think some of it's new to me. I think
Other people have questions.
Yeah. I think some of it's new to me, but I think it's I haven't seen anything that would make me change the way we're doing it right now. I think is the
That's the thing about keeping bees is that there's a million different ways to do one thing.
yeah,
You have to find your own way.
absolutely,
And it works.
and it works.
But it's good to hear other thoughts. But
Yeah, different ways to do the same thing, so you have a better, broader picture of everything.
It's a little late for this.
And the bees do so much on their own, you know. Like she was saying, the insulation is for peace of mind for the keeper mostly. That's probably right.
Right. This is, I had one year I put tar paper around it and stapled it on, and that was too much. And so the moisture didn't get out of the hive, and the wood was actually soft by the time I started pulling that off
Oh, really?
because of the moisture. So I think it's better not to do a lot of stuff. We can do more harm than good by trapping the moisture inside. Now that might work if you just do it loosely and you can do a rope just to keep it.
Yeah,
You gotta be careful about it. 'Cause they do okay.
on their own.
They do
Yeah.
okay on their own.
I wonder what the insulated property of honey is too. They've got those packed cells of honey that insulates them as they hide inside of the multiple frames,
That's true too.
and that's another.
That's true too. We were at a roadside little farm sale and place in Lakewood yesterday. And she took us around to their farm that they've got, and they've got one beehive that they have back there, and it's not for honey, so they just have it for pollination, and they have the different setup. So it's not for honey. It's different than the Langstrom boxes. The combs are going this way. They've got the box, and the combs are going this way. And they're just, it's kind of an interesting, and I've been thinking about that, how that might be different approaches to dealing with them for the winter. How that would be different since it's set up differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing because everybody does it for honey. They're just doing it for pollination in this little farm.
I have a neighbor across the street from my house that's got all sorts of. His whole property is just beautifully done with all these plants that don't require water. Turned the sprinklers off 3 or 4 years ago, and he wanted to put a hive in at his house, and he has the same thing. He doesn't want any of the honey from it, and I didn't take any of the honey. It's the first year, and so they're doing really well. But yeah, he has it there just to pollinate, nothing else. Yep.
So he doesn't even want the honey. So
He wants no part of
Does
it.
he have the regular Langstrom box?
He does. Yep.
'Cause
Yep.
there's a different setup that you can get.
That they have for pollination.
That it's just for pollinating, just not for honey.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it much. But it'll be interesting to see how that works
Yeah.
for them. I think they've had a lot of losses too with their overwintering.
Yeah.
We're in an interesting situation this
Yeah.
first time of the year. You know, just because.
I think we all have. Looking at them in the new year and seeing the hives that didn't make it is disheartening often.
It's depressing.
It is. It is.
I don't know what it is, but just looking at them in the morning and seeing them, the activity,
Yeah.
and it just makes you feel good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when you go out and look at nothing,
Depressing.
it is kind of depressing. Even if you take the boxes out, and, it's just not there anymore. You still look for it,
Yeah.
and it's
I have a little folding chair by my main hive, and I'll go take a cup of coffee out there and sit next to them and watch them come in, falling on their legs, and cheer them on. It's just, yeah, you're right. That activity is just uplifting.
It is.
You've got a circle
Oh,
It is.
it's like
and then
a quilting, batting,
Okay.
and this is just cotton, I just staple it
So,
on.
Paul,
And
you
then
guys
this
have
one has
that?
wood chips. You know, for your tent.
I don't know why they'd be making
Yeah.
clean. That's the next thing to come. No, because that's too yellow.
Candy corn.
It looks like wax. That means it
Keep the moisture up.
Let the moisture up, but not down.
I used it last
Top, or did you put it under and then?
I put that over them.
That would have gone this way.
Whatever moisture was coming up.
Yeah, there's the telltale sign.
One of them, I had
Tell you what, if she doesn't help you out with it,
No, you're not. Do it only for one hive.
Oh,
that's bizarre.
working.
Which would be the upside.
Okay.
Then you gotta tilt that so that the moisture that collects on that side rolls out, right?
And then I just take my drill that drills through the hole one
But
on each
in the
end.
hive unit, because they create a lot of
Put a little screw in. Oh, yeah. She just did the same thing.
Yeah.
Have you been putting filter?
No. This one
Sounds like
So, April, you put this under the
Under the lid.
cinder cover.
Oh, the alcohol?
alcohol wash is really
There's a lot of ways to do it in there.
There are quite a few. Kind of think that'd be fun with the club's hive to experiment with different ways and see how it affects the hives. And
It would be,
Yeah.
that would be very interesting. See which one does better.
yeah,
But then you're assuming that they're all the same. And they're
that's
not.
right. You're not starting from the same point.
So it would take a while to figure that out.
Yeah,
I think it has a lot to do with the queen
yeah, I think so.
and just genetics and who she's has a different it's set up for this kind of climate.
Yeah,
She'll do better, and a lot of them from California,
Don't.
they just don't. They don't survive here.
and this year all my hives are very passive queens. There's a noticeable difference
Yeah. Yeah.
in just the personalities of them.
But I like hives that are really aggressive. I like aggressive queens.
Yeah,
I think they're
keep the robbers out.
stronger. They're better chances.
Yeah.
I know I don't want to get stung all the time, but I think that's a better.
Yeah.
You got a better queen if you have a great mean hive.
Yeah, can protect a lot more. They're gonna protect a lot more.
Yeah.
I guess you'd consider it hippie bees versus soldier bees. The hippie bees are, come on in, yeah, no, let's hang out. You want some tea?
Let's chill.
Let's chill.
Yeah. Sugar, you need honey,
Yeah.
sugar, here.
What can I get for you?
Yeah.
Do you remember when Nikki was selling?
Yeah, basically.
She made them, somebody made them, and she just, they had a little
after that.
Oh, that's what you need.
Yeah, and I don't
Then you end up with Peruvian bees.
Yeah. I've been in
See, moisture, definitely more.
Works really well.
which actually caused me to do a lot of damage to
No, that's fine.
Yeah,
No problem. It's empty right now.
And that works.
Okay, no problem.
We survive
really, it's like we're
in the
talking about.
trunks of the trees for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those are thick.
True, that's definitely our value in there.
Our value is good.
I really don't.
Yeah, but there's that thicker wall. That's why I like that. Now I did send a letter. He was a professor at the aviary.
So instead of the wooden part,
Yeah, I was talking to the
and this is like warm air down, and there's
And I was talking to her about creating a heater for that. Not the commercial value, but the homeowner plug it in and it gets by the load. The idea of a heater. And I'm thinking, that's not the answer I wanted. I wanted to say, hey, what can I do for you?
Your controller will go high wire and you cook the bees and melt the wax.
But I called a greenhouse company and asked them if they could come up with a thermostat up to 40 degrees and then shut off. And then he started speaking French and I was speaking English, and we weren't communicating because this guy was their design engineer, and he kept saying, no, you have to heat up to like 60 degrees and then shut off. I said, I'm not heating a greenhouse, I'm heating a beehive. Oh, no, you gotta. And I finally said, okay, have a nice day, and that's
all kinds of hooks for the
we just didn't communicate. He couldn't figure out why I wanted to shut up at 40 degrees.
And you have to
heaters like 30,000 and I've seen,
for me, I'm lucky because I eat a lot of
You have a range. You need to tighten the range.
Yeah, it's like
had the
Well, it's your furnace. You got it where you set it so it's zero. Just keep going.
I'm worried about this.
Or you can give it a down to 5 degrees, and then it kicks on.
if they can get it to the places
Shuts
to,
off,
And
and then when it
so
takes
he was
down,
laughing.
it goes below.
once they decide
And then
to
it's
down,
down.
they won't stop until
And
they
I'm thinking
They said, I
40
think I called
imagine.
Thursday and said, I'm still in a lot of pain.
He said 40 installed. They would need for 40.
I've been on pain this
And the only reason I think I'm very 40 is because the kids around the world.
You're supposed to have pain. I said, really?
I never think
He said,
hey,
there's no icing.
they're all around 34 degrees. So, to me, that seems like the magic number.
So there's a lack of
Anyway.
I was shocked.
Giving the heaters and making lasers like no honey for you.
No, but they burn through a lot of honey when they're out close to the heat. I lost a lot of hives over the years
all the other
because
colonies,
they
maybe other colonies showed up.
this guy's running out of
Nope, didn't test me before my surgery.
And they were after Linda first.
When I came in, but I got sick before the surgery, remember? So I got sick and you were there. I thought I had COVID because I had this lower GI.
Anyway,
That I had
no, but
bacteria
and I can't get
and not COVID, so I was tested anyway. But when I went in, they didn't test me. Then when I went in, they had you wait for back. They handed me this book to sign. And then all the nurses that were regular hospital
maybe
patients.
they're on the board.
I
I told them we could patent it, and I know it's a patent attorney.
Most of the people came and took care of me. It wasn't like they signed only one nurse to me like when I was doing physical therapy for 4 weeks. I had one physical therapist,
That might be it.
and they did not allow anybody else to come
I'm
and
lucky enough to have my
touch me.
husband
Face-to-face physical therapy.
so I've got a bird feed.
So I was really kind of like, you know, all this
Son
isolation.
said bird feed stuff.
Well, tomorrow I got the guy
I'm
from
just
the
with COVID. I'm just with COVID.
And like,
That's always going on. My brother was.
But I mean, just so
Mine,
much.
just really one.
I have
The
got
worst case scenario is
one thing that I love is
the program. That's how I take
you know, when you get
Because the swarm, I think I'm going to leave them alone. They were a pretty weak swarm. So I'll look in there. But they look